Are we live now? It says we are live. How's the sound check? You have to check with your... If I could keep the mic this far away, it'd be good. How is the sound from this distance? Okay. Yeah, this distance is nice. Doesn't get in my way much. Can we keep it there or no? How's the sound? Yeah, it's okay. Okay. Good morning, everybody. We have a live audience here and the online audience of community of practitioners, Trika Mahāsiddha Yoga, and other interested beings coming in. We're happy to offer this service for free to the world for giving Dharma teachings on non-duality and the path of yoga and meditation of non-duality. Just a quick one for, there's some new names I see here, so people might not be aware of what Trika Mahāsiddha Yoga is. Very briefly, the Trika Mahāsiddha Yoga path is the rarefied essence of all of the non-dual Dharma meditation and yoga paths, in that my two great masters, who I took lineage from, who I received lineage from, urged me to develop a Dharma that maintains the integrity of the Mahāsiddha tradition, of the tradition of enlightenment, true enlightenment and rainbow body, sheared from all, losing all cultural and religious baggage that is unnecessary. And as I took their words to heart and their command to heart and set about that kind of mission, if you will, I ended up studying academically a fair bit about all the Dharma traditions. We're talking Yungdrung Bun, Bun Sarma, Vajrayana, Shaivism, non-dual Shaivism mostly, of so-called Kashmir, the Kubjika Mata Tantra, the Sri Vidya, and Orthodox Taoism, which was one of my earliest trainings. So I looked at them all in detail and realized, they all do the same practices in one form or another. They all have pretty much the same view, slight differences culturally, using different language or different examples and so forth. And I realized what my masters were asking me to do was to understand that there's a basis to the human path of realization, which goes far beyond any kind of sectarian, cultural, religious, ethnic versions of realization. And that doesn't mean we create a new kind of science of non-duality. I see that movement out there, and I don't think it's going to go anywhere in the end. Nice research might come out of it, because there's something that's missing in that view, I think. Maybe it'll change later, but we do need the transmission from the ancients, from all these various traditions. So when I teach Trika Mahāsiddha Yoga, I don't teach something new. I teach something ancient that pervades all those systems. And I teach those systems intact. When it's Kashmir Shaivism, I teach Kashmir Shaivism. When it's Bun view or technique, it's Bun. When it's Vajrayana, I keep it really clear. Dzogchen or the Taoist, I keep it just as it is, because there's an integrity in those systems as they are. And I don't think they should be put into a pot and stirred up and made into one. I don't think it works well that way. I think that will be the eventual outcome 500 or 1,000 years from now, if human beings don't obliterate themselves in the meantime. I think that'll be the eventual outcome. But to do it in one step would be too much, and too much would be lost in continuity of transmission. So that's not what we do. That's not our goal. Okay, that's a little bit about Trika Mahāsiddha Yoga for people that are interested. And let's start with the live questions, because we're going to go live first. We're trying to switch over to that format. I enjoy the live discussion a lot more than reading off of paper for people who can't make it when they're, I understand people have to work or they have commitments and they can't make it, so they want to send in their questions. But this is meant to be a live exchange, a live transmission. And I want to try to keep it that way. Okay. Purna Tantra. What a lovely name. Hello from Chile. Hello yourself. Buenos dias. Jorge Purna Yogam. Oh, I didn't know you had that name, Jorge. That's a nice name. Purna Yogam here. Thank you for this new coming Yogi. Always a great guiding. Okay. May all be free. True. I missed the question. Let's see. No questions came? Huh? Okay. Speak a little on the different kinds of relationship there are between the practitioner and teacher. Okay. So different relationships between practitioner and teacher. There are a lot of models for understanding this. And we want to try to give a few different views into it. It's a very comprehensive kind of teaching. It's very big, very complex, and we don't want to try to cover it in a few minutes, but let's just give some broad strokes so you can understand. Essentially, the most essential relationship between the teacher and the student should be that the teacher sees the student as a fully realized being who just doesn't know that yet, who just sort of still has a lot of confusion because they haven't gone behind their mind, and emotions to live in that place yet. And therefore, outer reference points are still needed. Outer reference points are still confusing. Outer contexts are still confusing at times. Outer contexts are still attractive and get us caught up in karmas of emotion and so on, and desire, attachment, subject, object, fulfillment, and so forth. But the essential relationship from teacher to student is that the student is a fully realized being. There's relative karma, temporal karma between teacher and student to meet in these forms, to realize their true nature, to know their true nature, which lies behind the mind, behind the energy, behind the emotion, behind the thought, and so on. And then on the relative level, though, the teacher works with the student, realizing that they don't have this kind of realization yet, and tries to understand where they're at in their journey. And for this, the 12-stage view teachings are very good. And if you don't know the 12-stage view teachings, you can learn them in the preliminaries course online. Is that right? Trika Mahāsiddha Yoga preliminaries course. Go to trikapath.com. Why don't you just type it in so some new people can check. And then you can see where you're at in the path, and a teacher can help you understand that. And the teacher will relate to you in that way based on where you're at in the path. Okay. So in a relative sense, the teacher's always trying to give us what we need. Everything should be benefic. Teacher should never have an ill intention towards the student. Student should never have ill intention towards the teacher. Those are the broad strokes. And we say that in the teacher-student prayer that we do before class sometimes, right? Now, from the student's perspective, though, and in the karmic field of the teacher still has a body. So there's a karmic field dictating some aspects of the way the ultimate wisdom will come from the teacher out into the teachings or to the student. There's a way, there's a attenuation, there's a flavoring through their own karmic disposition. Obviously, we know that. We see, strong warrior types give certain kind of bhava or feeling to their teachings or tone to their teaching. Those beings are full of love and compassion, just like anybody else, just like the display of the teacher who is like the sweet kind of teacher. But we often don't recognize this capacity of love and compassion through the strength and discipline and, strictness, etc. But basically, that's the way the one essence comes through teachers in different ways, and it meets the student also in an individual way. So the teacher has their own personality display. Not all Mahasiddhas were the same. Some were like, the sweetest cinnamon bun ever in the world, just so sweet and pouring out this kind of love and sitting there under a tree and smiling all the time. Other ones were wrathful and fiery and lived on an island surrounded by a lake of poison. And, there's all these stories about the Mahasiddhas that are different. It really goes to show that enlightenment is not one cookie cutter, one type of display. We have a personality that's due to our karmas. When that facade is stripped away and we live behind the personality, then we're said to be expressing our personality display, the enlightened nature of the way we come into this world. So Mahasiddhas show a full range of that display. On top of that, the relationship between teacher and student is refined by the individual karma as it meets both. And here we have a great tool in the Indian methods of astrology. I haven't seen it in Tibetan, but in the Indian methods of astrology, we have a great tool to look at what is the innate karmic predilection towards the energy that will flow between teacher and student. And we can see a few different types of relationships, right? This is sort of like relationship compatibility, but with a teacher. And there are said to be 4 pillars of your astrology chart. Of course, that's a huge simplification of all the things you can see in an astrology chart from tantric astrology. But 4 pillars give a good idea of how in general you will feel and relate with the teacher. And in what areas of life you'll feel certain ways, in other areas you feel another way. So we can have and this is backed up by the ancient teachings as well. We can have a relationship with the teacher where they feel like our father or our mother. We can have a relationship with the teacher where they feel like our child, and we want to just take care of them and protect them and serve them all the time. We can have a relationship with the teacher where they feel like a friend, and we just have such a good camaraderie when we want to hang out with them as a friend as well as a teacher. We see them both ways. We experience it in both ways. We can have a relationship with the teacher where they feel like a sibling, an older sibling or a younger sibling, right? That's possible too. We can have the classic relationship with the teacher where they are really the teacher, not just the father, but really the guru, really the, it doesn't come into any of these other human forms so much, familial forms so much, where we just have this sense of, boom, that person is, for me, the representation of the Dharma, always has been, and is beyond each of these individual kind of karmas that I'm describing right now. That's also possible. And there's also the other two relationships, which tend to cause a lot of problem for students. When students have the karma of the teacher as an enemy, they have an inimical relationship towards the teacher. You can see this in the astrology. What do you mean by enemy? How could you see the teacher as an enemy? Well, you really know that that person is your gateway into essence. You have this deep, profound experience of that. And yet you struggle with this feeling inside you that they annoy you. They just annoy you somehow. They make you crazy. Maybe their sensibilities aren't yours. Imagine if your teacher was a National Rifle Association, NRA, gun-toting, open carry, which means carries her gun on her at all times, going to the grocery store, whatever, Republican, right? And, she's pro-life, anti-abortion, and she's got all these other ideas, but she's your guru. But you're the other type. You're a postmodernist, woke kind of person. And you're saying, oh my God, they don't even believe in transgender reality. They think it's from Satan. And I'm totally believing in this because I'm woke. But yet, underneath this, I have this deep, deep attraction and knowing that that's my gateway into my own essence. This can create a lot of difficulty for students, obviously. But it's important to know if you have that kind of relationship, because then you can work with it. Because the ultimate overriding principle of Guru Yoga in the relational teachings aspect of it, not in the essence of it, but in the relational aspect of it, is that no matter what arises within me, if I'm practicing Guru Yoga, if I've taken a guru as my guru, person as my guru, Lama, Daoshi, whatever you want to call it in your system of non-dual meditation yoga, then I must know that everything that comes up within me is a projection. That's a teaching that's true and accurate, regardless of anything, regardless of teacher-student relationship or not. Any form of blaming outside circumstances, any form of attachment, desire, any form of expectation of being treated a certain way, or any of that stuff is always ours, period. Never more so do we understand that, or do we see it illustrated in the relationship with the teacher-student, because there, it's a very highly charged relationship. It's about the most important thing in life to us, our liberation. So we have to take responsibility for that stuff, but it becomes supercharged and a lot harder. And a lot of students with the inimical type of inherent enemies type of dynamic with this teacher will constantly in their mind have their karma running the mental discursive mind loop of trying to find fault with the teacher, trying to find fault with the teachings, trying to find fault with their behavior. And it undermines their spirituality a lot, undermines their practice a lot. Those students who have that relationship have to go into a very strong bhakti yoga mode and a very strong sense of understanding the teachings that place all responsibility on us for our relationship with the teacher, for everything we feel. Because you can sit in the group of students and you're like hating on the teacher, although you love them underneath somehow and you feel connected to essence. And you're really, you're seething with anger because they pronounced something wrong, or they made a joke you didn't like, or they're the NRA toting non-woke, whatever person, and you are woke or whatever. But you look around the room and 20 other people are like, I love it. It's so beautiful. This discussion's so wonderful. Oh, it touches my heart like raindrops of daisies upon my crown chakra, And you go, okay, well, that shows me the reality. The person is just the person. and we project everything onto the person. This is a teaching from Krishna in Krishna's yoga. The person is just the person, and we project everything. We create that whole dynamic. So if we can create that whole dynamic, if our karma says we come in with a enemy type of dynamic, it usually means in past life models that we were with that teacher for past lives, because that's usually how it works till we're liberated. And we had fights with them because we were big ego. We had a big ego then. Guess what? We got a big ego again. We had a big ego then. We had a big ego now. And we were fighting with them. And we came back with that. So the key for this 6-8 dynamic, we call it, is for you to see that in yourself and go, this ends now. That inimical experience is from karmas. And I'm here to get beyond my karmas. And my guru is here to show me how to go beyond those karmas. So this ends now. And I'm going to take on a bhava of supreme detachment from all of that, connection to the teacher, receiving loving transmission, and really putting all my energy into that experience, understanding that that's the reality. And that will bring me behind my mind into my heart through the heart of devotion, into the nature of my mind, into my essence through the heart, you see? So this is the way out for that person. And then the other last one, I think if I missed any, the other last one is a marriage type of feeling that you feel with the teacher. They call it a 1-7 or a 1-1. And it means that if you were normal people going to the astrologer to ask, oh, should I marry this person? If this was your question, the astrologer would go, oh, it's fantastic. It's one of the best possibilities you can have for a relationship, for being together. And they would encourage you to be together. So there's that kind of dynamic possible in the relationship as well, where you feel very much a human form of love. It could be romantic. It could actually be sexual attraction. It could be romantic, where you just feel like having a romantic feeling around them all the time. Like you want to just sip wine and talk to them, with some soft music playing in the background for the rest of your life. There's that kind of bhava. Or it can be highly charged with sexual energy as well. And we'll get into that next, because sometimes that's not even dependent on the relationship in the astrology, the karma. And so that could happen as well. And that's another relationship that can bring a lot of confusion to the student about how to deal with it, and to the teacher. Sometimes the teacher doesn't understand enough how to deal with it as well. So that dynamic exists because humans exist, and that dynamic exists in the human world. So of course it exists in the teacher-student world. It can be used as a way to ride into the devotional level of opening the heart to realize one's nature in the presence of the polished mirror of the guru's essence, which is the goal of guru yoga. So it can be used as an energy that bonds you deeply to the person and really open deeply into it. So in those cases, it's said to not repress even sexual attraction, but not repress romantic kind of feelings, not repress feelings of husband and wife, spousal feelings that are devoid of romance or lust or anything else. So there's, it can be spousal kind of feeling. It can be romantic kind of feeling. It can be sexualized kind of feeling that can come in that, and that can be confusing. And if you have that experience, you should have your chart checked with your teacher if they do this kind of astrology, and it can give you a lot of understanding, and it give you a good way to work with yourself, which is really powerful. Okay. And of course the teacher should understand that, just like any of the other bhavas, any of the other possibilities of relating, and simply be there for you as that repository of wisdom and compassion, and help you see that for yourself and learn how to transform that so that you understand your own essence. Then the other thing I wanted to mention was that because we mentioned the sexuality, it's often possible, at least in tantric yoga, people that get involved in tantric yoga, Taoist yoga, even Dzogchen yoga to a degree. So tantric yoga, whether it's Indian side, Kashmiri, or whether it's the Tibetan side, Vajrayana or Bun, they're in that kind of a transformational path because they have a lot of energy. Because they're, can you give me one down? Because they have a lot of energy, and because they have a lot of emotion, and they have a lot of passion, and they have a lot of power. And with that power comes a lot of desire and attachment. So that's what attracts us to tantric yoga in the first place. We want to transform this and know our liberated self. So in that powerful energetic dynamic, it's very, very easy for something to occur that we call, well, it doesn't matter what we call it, but something can occur in your subtle energy system where as you're grafting onto the teacher, onto the guru, it can feel like what you remember as infatuation as a kid or sexual lust. And not really a mistake. It's kind of like the same energy, but the outcome or the way you would then pursue that relationship would need to change, right? You can't go chasing your teacher around trying to date them all the time. And unless you have that karma and then you marry them or whatever. But usually you have to understand that this is part and parcel of a path that uses our deepest emotional, sexual energies, life force energies as the path itself. And that's non-dual tantric yoga. So if you know that that's possible in the range, even if you don't have this spousal relationship with the teacher that we described earlier from the astrology, from the pillars, then you're okay. You go, okay, so it's usually a phase. It may not last my whole life. It may last 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, but it usually comes and goes over time, you know. I know men I had male students that came to me and said, look, I'm pretty sure I was totally heterosexual my whole life. I don't have any leanings towards that, whatever, but I'm having such intense love experience with you as my teacher that I'm starting to wonder. And I said, well, maybe you're repressed, maybe you're bi, you can take years to figure it out, whatever. But usually after we have that initial discussion, the energy pops because it was under tension all the time because they were worried about whether they were, missing out on whether they were bisexual or not. And as our relationship continues over 5 months and 10 months and 6 months, like down the line, 2 years, whatever, you see a recalibration where the person who knew they were heterosexual recalibrates to understanding again that they were heterosexual, and that it was just this deep feeling of love and service and devotion, which some men have never really had stimulated in them, even when they get married. And they don't really even have that devotion to their wives. They love them, whatever that means, but they don't really, their heart isn't fully open yet. And when you meet the teacher, the heart gets baked a bit, and then all of a sudden these feelings can come up. So it could be confusing for some people on that side of it, right? Okay, so that's a bit about teacher-student relationships, covers it a bit. And the key thing, again, is we need to use the teacher as a gateway to our own essence. This is the key. This is essential guru yoga. And it's what we try to encapsulate with the prayer of awakening, the very first prayer that we have in the foundation practice, which if you're new to this system, you can get for free at www.trikapath.com or on the Facebook group, Trika Mahāsiddha Yoga, and go to the resources section. It's there for free. You can get those prayers and start using them to transform your mind stream towards the Dharma and your liberation. The very first prayer of awakening there is powerful because it's really a Guru Yoga prayer. That's why it's the first one, because Guru Yoga is the most important practice that we have, right? And in there, we're trying to purify our understanding of what is the Guru to us and how can we benefit most from this, right? From this relationship. But, having said that, there's a dangerous place. I'm going to mention this a little bit. I'm going to do a book on Guru Yoga because it's time for a modern Guru Yoga book. And I've been working on it. I have some good notes. I've been putting it down, actually, steadily. After this 1 year Kundalini Hatha Yoga Mahakumbhaka / Dumo training is finished, I'll have more time to write. It's going to come out. It's going to be good. But one of the things I think is difficult today is that we come from such a me oriented, me centered kind of culture right now. If you're under 45, I think, especially down around your 20s, you think the whole world was created for you. You really do. And it's not your fault. This is the way you were trained. This is the way you were conditioned. It's all through academia right now. There's no way to get away from it. You have to retrain yourself to be an autonomous human being that doesn't think the whole world was created for them. And that actually life is about contribution, not about taking what you can get. You have to retrain yourself for that. I came from a culture where that was taught in school, and you were, given merit for doing things that were meritorious instead of for yourself. So it's a whole different world now. In this new world, the way young people approach a guru is what I can get from them. And yes, of course, you're trying to get the teachings, the practices, the transmissions, the empowerments. And yes, you should be given those things if you're worthy, right? But approaching it like a transactional economic relationship of what I can get, I give this and I get that, actually is a dualistic way of dealing with the guru-disciple relationship. And you'll never get behind your mind with that approach. It just will never work. There's also such narcissism endemic in the whole culture now, everywhere, that people think and feel that they've created this karma for this relationship with their teacher. They almost take credit for the guru-disciple relationship. You know, there's that whole thing about, I created my guru, you know, I created the circumstances to attract to me. I created the circumstances to attract to me a really great guru so I could evolve. It's all about the I. And this is also a huge block, a huge impediment to realizing your true nature in relationship with the teacher. In relationship with the teacher, I need to be open, complete open book, empty vessel, fill me up, no me there at all. That's in a especially tantric yoga relationship with teacher. But you have to be in a higher stage of development to be able to do that, so that you don't get involved in cults and you don't have people take advantage of you, you know, non-consensual relationships, all kinds of things like that, abuse. So tantric yoga was never for the meek and mild. It was never for the person who has doormat karma, who lets people walk all over them, who hasn't developed a strong sense of psycho-emotional center. It's only for stronger people like that. Doesn't mean you have to have a wild display, just strong inside. So that when you finally have this relationship with the teacher, you know who you are, you know what they are, you know what you're doing, you know what you're receiving. This also keeps you from, the strong center though has to be there with the emptiness of the self. And that's what's so difficult for people to understand and actualize. But there you go. Spiritual path isn't so easy all the time. But I want to put that out because that's kind of important too to understand. Okay. To expand on Jorge's question. Does Jorge have a question? Do you feel that the student, from Anna Gibson, do you feel the student has to devote themselves fully to a teacher as a deity? Okay. Anna, it depends. If you're in that tantric old-fashioned model, then devoting to them as the deity will help you shift your awareness from thinking about them as a normal person like yourself. So here's another huge principle of Guru Yoga going in the book. If I'm relating to another person to grow, I'm only going to get so far, and it's going to be kind of slow. Because what they're mirroring, if I relate to them as a personality, as a limited personality, as a limited karmic character, and a body, and energy, and emotion, and a history, if I relate to them like that, I'm projecting my own biology, my own biography onto them. I'm a limited body. I'm a limited mind. I'm a limited emotion. I have a history in the relative dualistic world, which is kind of a delusionary thing anyway, from the Dharma perspective. So if I project that onto my teacher, if that's the way I see my teacher, that's what I receive back for the teaching. That's what I receive back from the mirror for my essence, because we have to create a different experience in ourselves to be able to receive that experience, right? So the reason that Tantric Yoga said to see the teacher as the deity, whether it's Shaivist yoga or Vajrayana or Bun, was to shift our mind to not see them as a limited human being, but to experience directly their three liberated bodies that they have, right? Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Nirmanakaya. Or Shiva Bindu, Shakti Bindu, Nara Bindu in Shaivist terms. To see these three aspects of the person in one and see them and try to experience them outside of karma. As we try through our heart mind to experience them, not think about them, to experience them outside of karma, so we receive that same experience, that opening of that essential energy, of the non-karmic pure vision of the Trikayas, Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, Nirmanakaya, or the Bindus, as I said. So that's the goal. That's what we really want to do. So if seeing them as a deity helps with that, that's great for you. That's a great thing. You know, if you can do that, just seeing them as a siddha, go for it. But why Tantra developed the guru as the deity was to help us get past that situation. We're so deeply conditioned about how we are as human beings and from dealing with other human beings that when we deal with the guru in that way, it's unconscious and immediate projection of our own humanness onto them. And then we never really benefit from that grace and transmission as much as we could. So the Tantric Yoga path set this up so that we could get beyond our own limitations. Now, if you can do that without making them a deity in your traditional tantric path that you follow, then you can do that. Okay, great. You can do that as a Mahāsiddha. Maybe you're the highest level capacity student. You can see them as directly as essence itself, right? But it's difficult. It's difficult. So that's why that was set up. So is it essential? How did you say it? Is it student has to devote to? So it's not absolutely necessary to do that, Anna, to project them as a deity. But for many, many, many people, it's very, very helpful, for sure. And Elisa? I did? BC, what is our body? Does it have its own consciousness? Bobby Chap, our body is purely an emanation of contracted energy of consciousness light under tension. And it is a contraction of those energies into a formed, organized, and patterned experience, which we call central channel, right, left channel, the 64,000 other channels that come from those, the main chakras and 64,000 chakras that come from those, and et cetera. So we have this body which develops around the template of the pure energy subtle body, which pre-existed and post-exists the death and birth of the physical body, the creation or manifestation of the physical body. And yet nothing is outside of essence itself. So if this body itself arises from essence energy, consciousness light, into a physical form of appearance and lives in the realm of desire, it also is the perfected body of consciousness light. The same way our mind is the perfective mind of consciousness light, but we're usually operating from data and concepts and never really in a state of being. So the body is this. The body holds that potential. There's nothing in this universe. Look, this book is made of consciousness light. The difference between the book and me is that the book can't realize its own nature and I can. That's the only difference. But everything is that consciousness light, just at different vibrational frequencies. So we have to understand our body this way. That's what makes the body a temple. That's what makes the body sacred. That's what makes the body an important aspect of the three gateways into our essence, right? We have the mind, we have the energy or speech or emotion, passion, and then we have the body itself. These are three gateways that we can use to get into our essence. And the body path uses the yogas and dance and the position in meditation and the eye gaze in certain directions and the bandhas, all the things you learn in physical yoga. Also uses the moment-to-moment interactive activity of the integration of the body as a vehicle for essence, not just physical yogas. So this is what the body is, and this is why it should be respected and should be cultivated fully and not abused by bad food or bad lifestyle and so on, right? Bad sex and bad relations, all this stuff can mess us up. Good morning, Sankanil. Okay, back to Annalisa. You've taught about the Hung mantra, Hung, 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 as both protection and purification, correct? How does this mantra do both? Do these aspects exist on a continuum? I'm not sure what you mean by the last part. I use Hung to close my practice, and I'm curious how to work with the purification aspect of the mantra. Okay. So when we do the great weapon mantra of the Shaiva yogis, which the Vajrayana absorbed and the Bun absorbed as well, Hung Pat, and we do this Hung Pat, right? We use these three sounds, Hung Pat, these three sounds, right? Hung Pat. And this Hung is the most important part of that for protection and for purification. The Hung is an essence bija of both the universal blue heart bindu that we talk about, when the Vishnu Granti and all the difficulties of the karmas of this middle kumbha are taken away and the radiance of our essence nature, it's always there, just veiled, comes pouring out. We call that the blue bindu is operating fully. The Hung is a resounding vibration of that power, right? There's Hring and Hung. Those two are the main mantras for the heart energy on that level. There's another set too, but these two are the main ones for this level of rectifying imbalances in the elemental expression or the wind expression through the heart, stopping us, the karmic expression, which inhibits us from expressing the enlightened heart experience. So the Hung is very powerful for that, and so is Hring. when we combine Hung, when we make it a weapon mantra, we call it the weapon mantra, the Astraya mantra. It's a, Om, Hung, Pat, Astraya, like that, or Om, Astraya, Hung, Pat. So you say it different ways in ceremony, different ways of putting the words together, but you're basically saying reverence to that great weapon, the mantra Hung. And when you pronounce it that way with the mantra idea, it's protective, right? And you can use it with different visualizations and so forth. So Hung is protective and it's purificatory. It's purificatory because as you are chanting the Hung, you are receding back into essence, moving away from delusory perceptions and projections of a dualistic reality. And that makes it purificatory in itself. And it's very much drawn upon in Kashmir Shaivism and Dzogchen, very, very much for that reason. Okay? So you can work with it with purification just by resounding Hung, 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 Hung in your mantra, in your mind. You go Hung, Hung, Hung. You can do it out loud. And you can feel your heart generate, your blue bindu generating Hungs and filling up your whole body, like little balls of Hung light, little blue balls of Hung light. And when they fill up your whole body, then you can see them start to emanate out through your body and fill out the universe. There's a nice purification method that everybody uses in the non-dual traditions. So that's nice because it sits you back into your essence there. And for protection, you can just imagine, I taught my kids this a long time ago, the thing that demons and ghosts don't really like is this essential blue light and the sound of Hung, Pat. It just shakes them up and rattles them, especially if you're ringing a bell that's been blessed with it as well. So it's protection-wise, you can use it this way too. And this is a way to protect yourself from your own problems, your own ignorance, and also from outside forces that would seek to attenuate your ability to do your sadhana and to get clear and clean with your own essence and so forth, right? Okay, hopefully that helps for now. Nicholas Anuloma, can you comment on the difference on the bhavas that we try to invoke in our light body visualization? Okay, for instance, in our yoga and foundation practice, we do red body, samokaya, enjoyment body, or potential energy. In our compassion practice, we do blue body. Well, you do blue because you're a man, but a woman does red, right? More into dharmakaya, and not so much. So can you comment on difference of the bhavas that we try to invoke in our light body visualization? Okay. So bhavana is an ancient practice from Shaivism, and you can see it written about really well, very deep discussion of it, and practices are given in the Machanda Samhita, which is a really nice book for those. And it's said in that book quite clearly that if we don't take on the bhavana, if we don't take on the feeling and visualization of ourself as a specific deity, this is deity yoga practice, Kaula Tantra is big into that, right? If we don't take on the bhavana of us as some form of Shiva or some form of Shakti, that we're always going to be relating to ourselves in this limited sense, as I described earlier with the Guru Yoga and so on. So the bhava or the bhavana practice is extremely important. When we take on the Vajradeha, we're taking on, give me another one lower, would you? We're taking on this sense that we are the red light body and we have all these channels and chakras and so on. But it can be difficult for us to make that big jump. And I lecture about this extensively, especially in this one-year program. Everybody in the room is probably sick of hearing it. We can do these visualizations and it can be very bright and very clear. And we can see the energy moving with our Kriya Yoga and our Mahakumbhaka fire practice and everything. And yet it can still be dualistic. This can all be still generated out of a dualistic inner vision, a dualistic experience of self. Even though the Vajradeha is supposed to be unlimited light, unlimited conscious light, the body of light, right? If we're generating it and we're not stepping out of our history, as individual, then it never happens. So this is why using the correct bhavana almost always involves a deity. So in the beginning practice, I taught the students to use the Vajradeha bhavana, but then as then as I started to get deeper into the program for the 1-year program, we started moving into the abhishekams of the different deities that they use in the progressive practice of the inner fire practice of Mahakumbhaka, which starts to refine their understanding of themselves and start to relax back into their nature as Sambhogakaya being, not limited dualistic Nirmanakaya, right? Nirmanakaya should be a liberated Buddha, but that's very hard to get to. So the deities are used for that. So therefore, the bhavanas are very important in general, number one. Number two, we have to practice them a lot to feel into what that would feel like to be that kind of expansive, extensive experience. So what was your specific kind of difference on the bhavas that we try? Different. Okay. So yeah, whatever deity you're doing has a slightly different bhava, different flavor. Now, if you're doing a set practice like we're doing here with Mahakumbhaka, you're all getting the same deities. But then next year, when we practice Way of Water and give those abhishekams of the 10 Dasha Mahavidyas, the 10 wisdom goddesses or wisdom dakinis, we're going to be chosen by one of those spontaneous arising awareness beings. And the reason we're being chosen by them is we have a karmic fit with them. Our personality even will fit with them. And we get that feeling of it. It feels that way. So when we try to emulate them through the deity yoga, it's like a glove in the hand. It's like a total perfect fit. You may find that one of the general bhavanas of one form of Shiva or Shakti already fits that way, and that's wonderful. But we should endeavor to bring on the difference of each deity. So there you have to know the deity, and you have to know yourself. If you don't know your personality display, where it's supposed to be going in the future as your nadi, you won't really know what deity you're attracted to or what deity can bring that out in you. If you don't know the knowledge of the deities and the type of energy they have, then you also can't align correctly with that. Does that make sense? So you have to know both. And then you can see the differences, right? You can feel the differences. I know you want me to lay all the differences out right now, but we just have too many deities to do that with. And we have a class on Dasha Mahavidyas coming up in 2 weeks, I think. So if you want to come in on that weekend teaching, you can start to preempt it. You can start to feel, because those 10 cover pretty much the whole range of our being. And then those 10 wisdom dakinis. So we can feel which one we're getting aligned to. 2 or 3, we might feel close to 2 or 3. And we can work with those visualizations and work with their understanding and so forth. And then by the time we offer the abhishekam, where you come to receive the teachings, and the ritual empowerment, where the deity actually takes you as their son or daughter, as their student, then it's like, boom, it all comes together and you can really fly with that. So until then, you can work with what you have and so forth. Okay. Yeah. All right. It's just too much. But like example, Hanuman is virtue. The virtue is, well, they're all virtue, but Hanuman is the virtue conduct of like a warrior deity, someone who is the perfect expression of impeccability, heartfelt devotional loyalty, and unfailing power. He's the son of the wind. When Shiva took the form of the wind to impregnate his mother, he's the son of the wind, meaning the most powerful. And he has no limits. He's that entryway into our essence nature through the heart of devotional loyalty, through the heart of the power to persevere through anything due to the sweetness of our nature, overcoming any difficulty of obstacles. Just everything is taken as a gift. This is Hanuman's whole story in the mythology. When Saturn went to sit on his head, he invited Saturn to sit on his head, meaning to give him Sarasati, the 7.5 bad years of Saturn. He said, yeah, come sit on my head. I want to see what that's like. He was just curious. And, he invites all these situations of pain and suffering and, trauma or whatever into his life so that he can experience the equanimity beyond it, and to show us the way that we can rise above it every time by identifying with our nature. So each deity has a different way. And actually in Way of Water 1, when Rami's here in January and February, and we're going through the main deities, a lot of my teaching is going to be the bhava of the deities. Rami won't spend a lot of time going on that. So you can start to develop the major deities, like all the forms of Shiva and Shakti and, Hanuman and so forth and so on. We'll be laying them all out and giving the abhishekams for them in that first 6-week training. Then you come back 9 months later to do the inner work of it, to get the Kriya Yoga, the inner energy channels of the deity and the ritual empowerment. and it really starts to cook, right? So the first is kind of preparatory, purificatory for about 10 months working with the larger deities. And then we fine tune it with the Dasha Mahavidya, the 10 Dakinis. And this way we fine tune it. Okay, cool. Well, why don't we do the deity visualization in the beginning? For instance, Pranashakti or Anuta Shiva is our visualization form of it. Okay, so now you know why. So when people train with me on a deeper level, they start off with deity visualization immediately. So everybody in this program right now starts their practice off with, a few Om chants, a few mantras, and visualizing the Vajradeha, and then boom, the Vajradeha is transformed into the visualization of deity, right? This is inner Tantra. We just don't throw it out to everybody who comes to these trainings here and there and then goes on living their secular life. It's a little bit deeper. So it should be reserved for that kind of practice with that kind of reverence in that kind of environment of reverence. Okay. So you're more than welcome to do that if that fits you, right? Did I get it? Why don't we? Yeah. Okay. Agni Vidya, how relevant are the higher practices which lead toward a completely non-dual state for householders living within a dualistic world? Good question. I think they're highly relevant. The higher practices that need retreat time away alone in a cabin for 6 months or 10 years. Okay, that's not relevant because you can't take your dualistic world with you that you have obligations to. Maybe you just never going to be able to get out of work your whole life and you have to work. That's your relationship with resources, money, karma. You weren't born into a rich family. You have to keep working your whole life. Then you've got to make it work with what you have. That doesn't mean you can't do higher practice. You just have to have the training and the practices that you can use as integration practices. Then the yogin who has either said, okay, I have all these obligations societally, but I'm going to leave them anyway. That's what a lot of yogins do. Or I've worked off my obligations the last 2 or 3 years and I'm going to be free to practice as I want. That's what some other yogins do, although that can become a trap and you never escape. There's that way of approaching it as well. There's that way of understanding householder life as very high practice. And there's a Sri Vidya story about that. There's a very good story from the Sri Vidya tradition where this great yogin is living in this village and he says to his wife, I'm sorry, honey, I have to go out and find the greatest master. I'm at that level of practice now where I need the greatest master. And to do that, I'm going to have to go to search through all these caves and mountains and other villages and see who, knows great yogins they can refer me to. And he says, sorry to leave you and the kids, but I got to go. She goes, okay, I understand. No problem. You go. Very Indian. So he goes, and long story short, he searches everywhere, goes to many, many, many villages, hundreds of villages, goes very far on foot everywhere. And every time he goes someplace and describes what he wants, the people say, I think over in that village. And they keep pointing him in a certain direction. Anyway, it turns out he does a big loop over a year or two of travel and gets back to his same village. Someone says, I think it's in that village, and I think it's in a house with a little bit of a red swastika on the outside and a nice lotus on this side of the door. And there's a little Ganesh pond nearby. And I think you'll recognize that's this house. And he's like, weird. That's my village. So he goes back. And anyway, as he's led down the street to figure out which house it was, he realized the description he was given was his own house. He knocks on the door in confusion, and his wife comes to the door and answers it. And she's radiantly expressing as the goddess Tripura at this point and gives him this full Shaktipata, as happens. He recognized the nature of his mind, we can say in Tibetan terms. Why? Because he was totally prepared for it. Because he traveled all around the world and he couldn't find it because it was right at home. There's a lot in that teaching, of course, that it's always within you. The essence is within you. But there's also the understanding that properly practiced, Tantra may need time in retreat, a week here, a week there, a month here, a month there. But overall, Tantric practice, you can go into as a householder. It just takes a very, very determined person. I'm not going to lie to you. It's not like, I can do Tantric. There's some scholars out there that teach Tantra like, it's the path of ease. Just make everything Tantra, la, 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 la. Total BS. Doing it integrated is the hardest path there is. Doing it integrated with a spouse who's not into the path, even harder. With a spouse who's into it, it's great. It becomes mirror consort training, but still doing it in the world in general, kids, school, work, all fixing your house. I got construction going on right now, and the septic tanks here, it's a mess. What starts out as a $3,000 job ends up being $5,000, $6,000. You're like, oh my God. So there's always this to deal with, right? So your question is interesting because you said the higher practices, which lead toward a complete non-dual state. You can have the non-dual state experience without going to so-called higher yogic practices that are needed to be done in seclusion. Let's be clear about that. But the path of integration for a householder yogin is no joke. I mean, it's full on. It's really no joke. So yes, it can be done, but it's hard. But hey, if you have that kind of Dharma heart, you go for it. No problem. Sankanil, is it normal to go through a spiritual drought? Yes. First of all, everybody know it doesn't go like this, like, no, your ascension to your non-dual experience, right? Everyone here is giggling. It goes like this. Whoa, back up. Plateau, back up, down, up. But overall, if you drew a line through it and averaged it, all these would come out to a diagonal in the upward direction. But a drought is kind of normal. When drought occurs, it's because you're reaching into a deeper place inside yourself, encompassing more of the view. Shunya, or the temporal nature of everything, is attempting to present itself to you, let's say, for your acknowledgement of that situation so that you can go deeper. But usually we experience it as boredom, plateau, nihilism, depression, lack of direction in life. Yeah, like this. We can experience it like that, or a pure plateau, or a disinterest in spiritual work. This is stage 7 shunya, which is our own Dharmakaya, our own Shiva Bindu, coming into full fruition for us so that we can open to something deeper. But it seems very hard. Now, usually, hard to get the lesson from that. But usually what I see happen is this usually drives a person to their teachings deeper. It drives them to spend more time with their teacher. It drives them to maybe look for a teacher for the first time. If they had a teacher already, they maybe need the next level teacher or something like that. I've noticed that spiritual droughts often come with, when you start to come out of it, you're starting to realize something's missing, and I need to reconnect. Maybe you reinitiate with the same teacher, whatever it is, but you reconnect and you go deeper. And I've seen that. So you said I had previously completed the preliminaries in 2021 and started with Kundalini Hatha Yoga, which I did diligently, then I lost the urge for practice. It has been a few months now and I'm slowly regaining the urge. Any advice or tips how to go about it? Is this a normal occurrence? Does it mean I don't have it for walking spiritual path? Don't give up on yourself like that. No. So you did all the online training and you did the Kundalini Hatha Yoga, but that Kundalini Hatha Yoga that we have online, that we offer for free online on the website, is only preparatory. It's only preparatory for the first level, really. It's almost introductory in that sense, balancing your 5 elements so you can practice deeper yogas. So it would be normal that once you complete that, you're like, that's it. I don't have any, because there are levels, because that's only preparatory. So don't think that way, okay? And definitely you have it. There's no doubt you have a Dharma heart in you. It's about getting out of comfort zones. We got to lose our comfort zones. We don't have to necessarily change everything about our job or our family situation to lose our comfort zones. Maybe you do sometime to go steer into the woods or whatever. But getting out of our comfort zones in our situation that we're presently in is really powerful. And that's what can help us go deeper again. When I hit a plateau, I do a few things. One, I go into contemplation mode and I search my mind for what spiritual concepts I'm holding. Excuse me. Now, of course, I'm not trying to hold any spiritual concepts, right? I'm a Dharma bum. I'm a yogi, and I am always trying to get rid of that. But when I hit a plateau, I realize I am holding some and I don't know what they are. I want to go into my deeper aspect of my mind that limits me from being a full rainbow body Buddha. That's my first contemplation. The next thing is I look at my life. The next examination I do in contemplation is, where am I finding too much comfort? Where am I relaxing the edge that keeps me awake? And then it doesn't matter, even if it's in spiritual work, and then I'll make the adjustments. So first thing I'll find the spiritual concepts that have turned into reified reality, and then I'll find also, where am I comfortable? Where did I get too comfortable? How can I change it for a while or permanently? And a third thing I'll do is then go look at what aspects of my character are still expressing that are karmic, that I haven't transformed completely yet. Let me really double down on that. These three areas alone will take the person, the real sadhak, the real sincere sadhak, just contemplating on these three areas alone when you hit plateaus or boredom or depression or, or I've been there, done that, I'm all good, will usually take the person farther. That's if the person has, like I said before, trained in person with a teacher, not just online and so forth, because it's about the relationship. And all the way back to Coach's question in the beginning, it's about the relationship in the physical reality. Another part of the Guru Yoga book, we can think we have a relationship with a dead teacher. That's very popular these days. Here's how the postmodern, narcissistic spiritual person gets around Guru Yoga training. I have a relationship with Yogananda. I have a relationship with Nityananda. I have a relationship with Ramana. I have a relationship with Abhinavagupta. That's all I need. So they read their sutras and they walk around thinking that they're spiritualizing, never having received real instructions, never having gone through a real thing with the real gurus and really, one-on-one and worked hard. And it's a delusion. Frankly put, it's a huge delusion. And yes, of course you can have connections to those great beings. They're unlimited. But having them as your main guru and they're teaching you without any contact with a real live teacher, impossible. It just doesn't happen. It's a delusion. You only see it in the Indian side of the mountains, in the Hindu world. You don't see it in the Tibetan Buddhist or Vajrayana, Bumpo world. Because it would be considered like, what? Are you crazy? Like you haven't had real training in a real tradition and initiated in the lineage, blah, 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 blah. It seems to be only an Indian sickness, which is kind of sad. So yeah, you can't have a guru that's dead. You can't have a guru that lives on the other side of the world and you communicate with them through yogi to yogi only on TV, online, or through an occasional email. You may think that that's really profound, and it might be for you, but imagine what it was in person. It's what it would be in person. This is the key, right? Okay. So a lot of times when we get these feelings, it's time to find a new well to drink from as well. Okay, where do we go? I figured it out. Timo? All right, Vajra boy. Hi, Dharma. What austerity practices would be suitable for lay people to practice? What austerity practices would be suitable for? And should some of these austerity practices be practiced regularly, like a specific period each year? That's a question I haven't really thought about. What austerity practice would be suitable for lay people? For lay people, the austerity is usually inner. You can't do a lot of outer, except maybe don't be an Amazon.com junkie buying everything all the time. That might be good. Oh, right. But the austerity is usually inner, watching the desire mechanism, the desire object formation mechanism, and dropping that. That's the real austerity, to burn from within. If you're integrating the yogic practices you learn on retreat with your teacher or whatever, and then you go home, that's really the main austerity. I can't think of, there's usual things like don't overeat. These are classic austerities that are there, but they're just good health advice too. Don't stay up late at night. Don't overeat. Don't have too much sex. Don't have too little sex, blah, 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 blah. But as far as real austerities, I think it's the inner one of just burning up every attachment to our desires. We can have desires, but we don't want to have attachment to them. The desire should arise, and the assessment should be made with a calm heart about whether it's following my natural appetites or not. And if that's following my natural appetites, then I can go with it, but then don't become attached to it. Don't overindulge. I think that's probably the main austerity that I would recommend for, I know you were looking for something else, some other kind of periodic yogic type of thing, but I don't think that's the way to go. If you have more to refine on that question, please send it in. Okay. Sometimes so Anuloma, Nicholas Morta, sometimes when I double Kumbha breathe, instead of the energy going through the back channel, it leaks in a bit into the central channel. Is that an issue, or shouldn't I worry about it? It's not a problem. And there are levels of Rudy's work. And right now you're doing double breath. So that's, elementary work for Rudy's work. At some point, we actually breathe it into the central channel, and we do things with it in the central channel in Rudy's work, right? So that's a natural thing happening. I wouldn't worry about it at all. Just keep consciously competent with the exercise you're doing. And true to form, when we reach a certain place, the energy will do what it needs to do anyway, even while we stay consciously competent of doing the exercise. So in other words, when I go to do my inner Kriya Yoga for the deity yogas, I'm still going to sit down and create all of the cycles, the 5 cycles of energy and light that I have to do for the deity yoga. But as soon as I sit down and make the intention from doing it for all these years, it pretty much sets itself up already. It's all going already. But I go through the practice. That's to remain consciously competent. That's kind of important, okay? Will you be here in the U.S. this year or soon? I won't be back this year in the U.S. I can't stay in the U.S. because of tax reasons more than 30 days a year, so I can't go that much anyway. And the development of the main center has been slowed greatly due to lack of funding. So I don't know how long that will take. So it's going to be for here for now and teachings in Europe next year. When did I start in Europe? Spring? In spring next year I'll be in Europe. If you want to hop over there, if it's easier than Costa Rica. Oh yeah, Brazil this year in October. If you want to come down and get a really good sort of taster of a lot of what we do in our training, I'm going to do a 10-day pretty full-on training in Brazil in the city of Vitória. So you can look that up. That's on our website, right? It's posted on the website. Sajidakini is about to put up the schedule for next year. That's going up real soon. A lot of way of water trainings next year, dream yogas, death yogas, like all kinds of things there too. All right. Okie dokie. Good, we're done there. Nobody's got any more questions coming in, so we'll go to the paper for a little 27 minutes or so. Michal from Israel, I believe. Congratulations, you just got married. Fantastic. I think you're still in Israel. Oh, maybe a different Michal. Okay, maybe not you, Michal. Sorry. Maybe you didn't get married, but good luck. I hope you do. First of all, thank you for these series with all my heart. One, are you familiar with the topic of Jakri? Jakri. No, I don't know what that means, Jakri. How do you generally view the work? I don't know if this is related to Jakri or whatever, but how do you generally view the work of shamans, especially Himalayan, from a tantric perspective? Okay. So yeah, Tantra absorbed everything that's useful and just kept it inside of itself. It never got rid of the shamanism. It just revisioned it and repurposed it. So I did a lot of shamanic training before it was popular back in the 70s and 80s because I saw that it had potential for healing because I was trained to be a doctor. Okay, so I want to learn how to heal people of things that seem to be out of the realm of what I could do with my herbs in my hands. So yeah, I trained in shamanism for healing. Then I realized that people think about it as a spiritual path, and it's not really a spiritual path at all. But there are aspects of it that help to augment our spiritual practice. And I decided to do an online series of teachings between spring and fall next year that will look at 5 elements and shamanism in Tantra and tantric psychology. 5 elements and what did I say? I said 5 elements and something. Anyway, yeah, in shamanism and Tantra and Trika psychology. So I'm going to go do that next year as a kind of a series of classes, maybe 2 weekends or 3 weekends or something like that, but kind of go into it in depth. So I believe there's a lot of use, or at least there's value in training certain forms of shamanism. But I don't believe there's value in training shamanism as a spiritual path, because that's not what shamanism is or was. And that's the truth. And I'm breaking it to you because most people today don't know that. People do shaman workshops to try to get spiritual. And, most of the shamans I knew were amazing people on the level of healing, but very few actually were people that I would want to emulate their lives. Many of them had addiction problems and so forth, but could do amazing healings, and control of spirits, relationship with spirits, and so on. I do a big talk on this somewhere. I think on YouTube, we have a very long class on this one topic of shamanism and spirituality. Suffice to say, it really is like this. In the Hawaiian system I studied, and in the Cherokee Lakota stuff I studied, paths I studied, trained in actually, there is considered to be two different types of people. One is a medicine person. That's the healing shaman. And that's 99% of the people you know. Sometimes the person trains as a shaman for a long time, and because they had this desire to help other beings, they naturally had a spiritual heart. And then they seem to be going on a different tangent where they seem to be going beyond healing, and they become what's called a holy person. So a medicine person evolves naturally into a holy person. At that point, the shamanism they perform is not, in fact, they often stop doing regular rituals and just give teachings. But when they do a ceremony, it's for rectifying on a much higher level. So even the shamans themselves recognize that shamanism is just a healing thing. And if you want to go further, you got to go into holy training, which we would call Dharma training, and it happens like that. So how do I work? How do I view the work of shamans from a tantric perspective? Well, Tantra has a lot of healing methods in it as well, because Tantra is very pragmatic, and tantric yogins like to be powerfully independent. So they need to know how to heal themselves. So they pick up a lot of these healing methods as well. Other than that, it just informs our worldview, but then it's turned into a non-dual view of pure wisdom light, which is way beyond what shamans understand or do. No matter what shamans try to tell you today to sell their stuff, that, yeah, we have the yogic view, everything is one Shiva consciousness, pure light. They don't. It's not like that. They don't really have a non-dual system of yoga and meditation that produces wisdom light bodies of rainbow light. Much as I love all my shaman tutors, they don't have that. And these shamans I studied with were before it was popular, and they weren't in it for the money. And they told that truth. This is not, you got to be a holy person to get spiritual. This is like about healing. Just because you use methods that are not related to physical substances doesn't mean you're spiritual. It means you're a little bit of a magician, but magicians aren't realized. Number two, do you know any materials or books that would bring the subject of art from tantric perspective? Heard of Gandharva Tantra? Okay, I'm not quite sure that would bring the subject of art. Not quite sure what you mean by that. I don't know any traditional texts that teach about art in Tantra, but I do know that Abhinavagupta has spoken about it extensively. And there are a number of books put together topic-wise where Abhinava talks about certain topics, and they've put together some books where you can look up topic-wise. You might look there for Abhinavagupta from Kashmir Shaivism. He might have talked about it. Well, he did talk about it, actually. I've read a number of things he's written himself, but I just can't remember exactly which text they were from at this moment. So, okay, thanks for your questions. Peter, how does Shaivism practice with the 5 elements? In Tibetan Tantra, it is quite simple because there are usually 5 chakras. Each chakra corresponds to an element, same in Shaivism. In Indian traditions, it seems less understandable to me, especially since I haven't heard anyone practicing with the elements as their main practice in Hindu traditions. Okay, Peter, great question. 5-element practice in Indian Tantra was the practice, the core foundational, core center practice that everything spun off of in the ancient world. If we didn't understand the 5 elements, we don't understand how anything comes in and out of being. We don't understand our own mind. It was at the basis of understanding our health, the basis of understanding all manifestation, and the basis of understanding how we become realized. So I'm very big into the 5 elements, Peter, and Shaivism is very big into it. You just see so much emphasis in Shaivism, non-dual Kashmir Shaivism, so much emphasis on meditation, that we forget that there were whole texts devoted to this that are considered core texts of the Kashmir Shaivis yoga curricula. You can look up, which text is it? Is it the Malini? It's either the Malini Vijayotara Tantra or that Abhinavagupta made non-dual, or Tantra Sara has a really great section on the 5 elements and the 5-element practices, yet they're indecipherable to somebody unless you have the explanation that Alexis Sanderson gives or that Harish Wallace gives. He has a good explanation of the 5-element practice as well in the Tantra. So 5 elements is a massive part of the practice. And I spent at least 10 years of my early formative tantric practice holding that as my base. Now, having said that, what are the practices? Well, we first work with Tattva Shuddhi. the purification of the 5 elements. And purification here is a term that we want to stretch and expand to mean that if all limitations came off the 5 elements, I would be fully realized. The purification of the 5 elements means me losing all karma, because the karma are bound to be expressed through the 5 elemental lights. The chakras express the 5 elemental lights, and they come out, it attenuates the pure light of consciousness into the karmic light, the impure vision. That creates our karma, our situation, our body, our mind, everything. So we start off with Tattva Shuddhi, and there are progressive paths of Tattva Shuddhi. And I think I'm going to teach them, I think I'm going to make this a very comprehensive teaching when I do the 5 elements of non-dual Shaiva Tantra Yoga and Trika Psychology and Shamanism classes next year, and include at least 3, maybe 4 of the progressional practices, 3 or 4 of the progressional practices of the 5 elements in there, of the Tattva Shuddhi, of the purification of the 5 elements. After that practice series, then our teachers teach us ways to work with the 5 elements with our breath, with pranayam and visualization, until we eventually gain control over the 5 elements. Literally demonstrated in control outside yourself as inside yourself. So some yogis I know can control water or fire, or even like there's a famous story of a lama who was sitting calmly while the temple was burning. Someone came and told him, there's a huge fire, we can't put it out. He said, just stop, I'll put it out. And from where he was sitting, he engaged with his fire element, because he had performed the Mahakumbhaka practice, which they call Dumo, and he had control of the fire element, and he put out the fire just mentally, right? So yeah, there's a lot to say about 5 element practice in Kashmir Shaivism. And I'm really sad that most of these scholar gurus, I use that term very loosely, scholar gurus, who went to university, learned about Shaivism, studied a little bit with Shaiva academics, and then had a little bit of contact with gurus, but not full training, some very little contact, are out there teaching yogic paths to people and don't know their ass from their elbow, basically. They don't know the path. And in the path, the 5 elements is an extremely important part of the path, really important part. Just because modern people with their psychology and predilection can't relate to the 5 elements, and because the practices aren't flashy, and because they take a long time to get results, these commercial-based fake gurus won't teach it to you, because they want to keep you wowed with the idea of just do this simple meditation with me and receive it from me, my abhishekam, my transmission power, and then you're going to get realized, and it's BS. No one's getting anything but more God realm fixation out of that. And that's why it's not popular, right? These 5 element things. And I studied the 4 elements, at least, in my shamanism a lot. And that gave me a good basis for it. So earlier, someone asked about the shamanism and the 5 elements. And I think this is another important thing. You get a real feeling for the dualistic understanding of the 5 elements, which then can bridge you into the non-dual when you work that way. That helped me a lot. But it takes a lot of time. And if you're already kind of middle-aged or older, I wouldn't bother with shamanism and 5 elements. I would just go right into tantric or Shaiva practice with the 5 elements. And Peter, your question is interesting too, because we talk about Tibetan practices with the 5 elements, and I've been brought into the deeper levels of Vajrayana, Bun, and Dzogchen over many decades here now, and over a few decades. And I really don't see a lot of emphasis in their Tantra at all on it, actually. They seem to handle it really quickly in the preliminaries before they get to the main practice. And so you don't see it really being gone into in a deep way. I think actually the Indians go much deeper into it, to be honest, in a traditional teaching format, the way I teach it, not in the modern scholarly way of doing it. Okay. Hopefully that helps you. And I see that Anouk wrote in and gave the name Malini Vijayotara Tantra, which is where maybe some of those 5 element practices are found that I was alluding to. I'll definitely get the reference by the time I do the class on it next year for you all. And I always encourage my students to do a lot of Tattva Shuddhi, a lot of 5 element practice. In fact, the students who are in the practice retreat right now, it has about 2.5 months to go or so. This whole year, I encourage them to do 5 element practice kind of once a day. And there are graded levels of that. Okay. Thanks for your question, Peter. Very good question. Justin, after having received the transmission of the Mahamrityunjaya, is it okay to hold or repeat the Bija mantras, Hraung, Jung, Saha, in second attention throughout the day? Sure, absolutely. Once you receive abhishekam of something, you're allowed to use it. You should use it in the way the tradition wants you to use it, not in your own way, as far as like, selling it or mixing it with other things and so on. But once you have it and you understand the use of it, Hraung Jung Saha, second attention throughout the day, is really good. And I don't know if you know this. I don't know who you received it from. You don't say here. No. So I don't know who you received it from, what their teaching on it is. But one of the inner teachings we have on this mantra for us in our tradition is that the Hraung Jung Saha, or Haung Jung Saha, some people use as well, depending on what lineage you're from. The Hraung Jung Saha is very much from our lineage. So I'm wondering where you received that. But anyway, it represents the staying present with the consciousness of all of creation manifestation of the 5 colored lights coming into being, abiding temporarily, and then resolving back out. The constant play of that coming in and out, coming in and out. The way my gurus described it to me when I got empowerment with it was that it's universal digestion, universal eating. They said, are you a Vishwa Yogi or a Vishwa Bogi? And I said, what is that? I didn't know any Sanskrit. Vishwa Bogi, a person who is being consumed by the world of desire fulfillment. And I said, no, I hope not. And so they said, okay, are you a Vishwa Yogi? I said, what's that? Someone who is digesting all of reality every moment. And this mantra, these 3 bijas, Hraung Jung Saha or Haung Jung Saha, are said to invoke the sense of putting us into a confluent, congruous experience, a harmonized experience with the process of the temporal constantly coming out as the 5 colored lights and going back and coming out and going back. So we detach from everything in a beautiful way while we're engaged. So I didn't know if you knew that or not. Received it through foundation. Oh, great. So I gave it to you. All right. That's because usually it's howling out there. So yeah, great. So use it that way, Justin. That's wonderful. You can for sure. Philosophy also has a lot of info about the elements. Alexander, just the same Tumo Kumbhak's story was told by Lama Glenn. There you go. There you go. Always good synchronicities. Okay, glad it helped you, Justin. Awesome. And Mary. I've been doing intense Dhumavati sadhana to break through some unconscious dridha, fixed karma, that is hard for me to see. It's generated a lot of inner heat. I had to stop the intense meditation because I received multiple warnings from spirit that my house would burn down if I continued. Can you explain why this happens? Why, what happens? I stopped the sadhana, by the way, and I'm just doing journaling and centering. Can I explain why? Can you explain why this happens? Which part? A lot of inner things, heat, stuff. I guess you're wondering why the inner heat problem or why your house would burn down. Let me try to just answer a bit. If you have a moment to send a refining sentence or two, that'd be great. Okay, so I didn't give you that sadhana, I don't think. So one of the first things I'd have to say is, did you receive that sadhana correctly? One of the things that a lot of modern Hindu teachers don't teach about the Mahavidyas is that they are more on the level of what we call a Dakini or a Yogini, meaning they're not considered to be the same category of celestial being as a Mahadevi Mahadeva. They're considered to be an extension of them into this world to make contact with us in a more powerful way. But yet, many of them use the same epithet as the main deity, like Kali and Tara and Sundari. It's like, well, those are the big deities, right? But the difference is here that they're emanating themselves in a form that is more compatible with us, that is more on our own level, more present, has more manifested presence, able for us more easily to connect to, and so on, and work with more powerfully. Now, having said that, the yoginis or dakinis are mirror beings. Just like real yoginis, dakinis in the real world who've taken birth coming from that realm into this world are also mirror beings and can be wrathful or can be beautiful, sweet, depending on how we come to them. And Same for dakas, right? The masculine side. So when we approach a Dasha Mahavidya, a wisdom dakini, we have to approach them in a very pure way. And if we don't approach them in a pure way, they're going to represent to us the wrath that will purify us. And that can create circumstances in our life that seem difficult as well, you know. So the first question is, did you receive it as part of a system where you did all of the proper purification first and receive the proper teachings that would allow you to relate to Dhumavati in the proper sense? In other words, if you're relating to Dhumavati and you have any kind of God realm karma, any kind of spiritual narcissism, pride, or ego, you're going to get slaughtered, because I'm looking at her right now, she is nothing but the real deal. Out of all the wisdom dakinis, she's the one who has no accoutrement, no big exciting display. She's death itself, ready to gobble up any of that garbage of our own narcissistic personality that we're ready to put out there. So a few things to check. One, did you receive proper abhishekam? Did you receive proper preparation from the guru who gave you that abhishekam? Did you do the proper purification if you did receive it? Number two, have you been self-examining for levels of pride, ego, and so forth that are incongruous with the Dhumavati energy? Dhumavati is meant to take you directly to stage 7 out of the 12 stages, the pure shunya energy, taking you right into pure essence alone, beyond everything. And if we don't have that experience in our heart that we really want that, we're not ready to really let go, she's going to rip us a new one. Be sure of that, right? So maybe that's why it's happening. So I would check all those boxes. If all those boxes are checked, you did the right preparation, you got the right abhishekam, you're holding the right bhava towards the deity, you're not thinking that you're special, you're not, all the God realm narcissism stuff, spiritual materialism, you're not special, and you're not above it all, and you don't think the whole world is benefited just by you being around with your glow coming off and benefiting them. You don't have a superiority complex. You take in all of the pain of life as well as the pleasure equally, showing no preference for pain or pleasure. All right, if you're good with that, then you don't have a God realm fixation. Then it's just a matter of relaxing and doing more sadhana with her to work with it, really. And don't worry about your house burning down. It's probably not going to burn down unless you leave the stove on or something ridiculous, Okay. All right. Maybe you want to, depending on your answers to those questions, if you hadn't received these teachings in a lineage from a live teacher and had the abhishekam, the empowerment of the deity, you might want to revisit that when we teach it next 2 weeks as a prerequisite for, or not a prereq, but a warm up for giving those abhishekams next year in the way of water that we're keying on next year. Okay. Hope that helps you, Mary. Ray, I'm wondering what the difference is between the lower Tantien and the Manipur chakra. As it is said, the lower one is 2 inches or so below the navel. But like you, some Chinese Qigong practitioners say that it is the same as Manipura. And all practices are said to be done from that point, as you had done with the wrong chant from the 10 Forces course. I think either one would have a connection to the belt channel. Okay, let me just start with that right away. Lower Tantien, that terminology comes from Taoist yoga. And it doesn't refer to a point. It doesn't refer to one chakra or a point. In fact, the name means the field, the area, the diffuse, not well-defined area where the elixir of immortality is created. That's what Tantien means. Tantien means that. Doesn't mean chakra. So it means the whole area below your diaphragm and above your pelvic floor. That's the lower Tantien. So that's the first thing I want to correct. If I said by mistake that the lower Tantien is the Manipura chakra, it absolutely is not. That's a mistake if I said that. And I'd like you to point it out to me on whatever video it is so that we can correct it, edit it, because it's not true. 2 or so inches below the navel. The center of the lower Tantien, like if it was a sphere, the center might be at 2 inches below your navel, right? But the whole feel is what we're talking about here. But what is your main question about it? Let me see. So first of all, let's correct that one. And then Same as all practices are said to be done from that point. All practices, all lower Tantien practices, or what kind of practices are we talking about? So I would never say all practices are done from that point. That's not right. There's many, many, many different areas we focus on for many, many different practices. So maybe I misunderstood your question, but there's only some that we would go from that point. 2 inches below the Manipura chakra is often an area that's used by yogins on both sides of the mountains to kind of consolidate the water, earth, and fire elements, to bring them together so that you have some powerful force being created, a new force being created out of that. As the ancient yogins would say, there's a union of apanavayu, pranavayu at samanavayu, which is generally known as the Manipura chakra, but it's the whole area basically. But many yogins use that point 2 inches below to make the point that it's not just Manipura. Manipura itself is related to the fire element, right? Rang mantra is not the mantra of Manipura chakra. This is a mistake that people make in conflating 5-element practice with chakra practice. Lang, Vang, Rang, Yang, Hang are not the chakra mantras. They're elemental mantras, right? It's quite different. Okay, so now let's get into your question. I think other one, belt channel, yeah, they could be connected to the belt, of course, a little bit. Also in Yogi Vishwabhogi, absorbing everything from the outside, including our fear, anxiety, and everything around us, and absorbing into Agya, as in the foundations exercise, is a thing to do to bring all those energies in to transmute them. I've found that it has worked for me. Great. Would like your comments, and also doing the energy release exercise from the foundations practice before or after doing anything that may be stressful. Okay. So, yes, you would love to digest. We just had this conversation yesterday, right? Quite a nimitta, digesting outside world. Was it yesterday? Yeah. Teaching, yeah. So yeah, this just came up just recently in the group here. We can hold one understanding of the so-called outer world for a while to help us integrate, to go beyond, eventually go beyond distinctions of inner and outer. That the outer world, we project it. But because we project it, we can see it, and it's useful to us to learn about ourselves and to grow. So every situation in the outer world, which would create emotion of fear or anger, like you said, anxiety, whatever, we can breathe that in through the Agya chakra and have it fill our central channel system and get transformed very naturally, and just meeting those difficulties in life in this way, where we vow to digest them and make them part of our experience, already raises our fire element in Manipura chakra. It already raises the experience of the lower Tantien. We're already starting to transform our daily life experience into that nectar. So that's a good orientation to keep. I recommend you keep doing it, and that's really good. And the energy releasing exercise is also very pragmatic, because we're only as good as how we are at that time in our life, and we may not have enough power to digest really big things that are happening to us. So we want to keep taking that stress and tension out of the channels, therefore out of our mind, out of our body, and so on. All right. Who's this? Jens. Let me get to Jens's questions. And then another one came in from the outside world, and we shall see. You guys have none here? Okay. From Jens. I hope you are well. I want to ask you about humor and comedy. That's another nimitta. I just gave the powers, and one of them was humor the other day. On the first day of Karmic Hatha Yoga Level 1 retreat, you introduced us all to Srimad Chandanatha, who was expressing various qualities of essence, one of which was his sense of humor, even laughter, in the face of samsara. Can you please elaborate on his sense of humor? For example, what realizations or aspects of view bring forth that particular disposition? Okay, so we have characteristics of full realization in the tradition, and they're listed out. And I listed them out the other day in a teaching, so I won't go into them all right now. Some are power, and some are like there's power and blah, blah, blah. Let's just go to humor right away. So there's a sense, one of the 5 manifested qualities of realization is humor. But here, the term humor doesn't mean comedy. It doesn't mean making jokes and laughing at everything that's difficult. Humor here is the sense of, isn't everything laughable in a sense that isn't everything absurd when I attach to the experience of the outer world as so heavy, so important, so serious, you know? And when we get rid of that, we get a lightness. So a way of understanding humor in the spiritual realization is that we have to have a certain lightness with everything, with ourselves especially. And this is one of the great powers of a realized being. They have a lightness. They have a lightness. They let go easily. They don't hold strongly. They let go easily. And this is a very important thing. So this is called humor, okay? Now, it just happens, they call it humor, I think, even though it's lightness, because what is the direct expression of this lightness is that, honestly, many things are just laughable. You know, everybody's, freaking out over this or that issue, and it's just laughable. I'm now old enough to look back on the history of the United States socially and watch how many different issues from when I was a kid protesting in the streets about the drinking age with my brother, who was 6 years older than me. I didn't drink. I was a little kid, but I was into the 60s, I was born in the 60s and quite a conscious kid. And I went along to all these rallies against Vietnam War and why the drinking age was 21, but I could die for my country at 18 in the military being drafted. And you look at all these social changes over time and the opening up of, all kinds of things. Let's talk about like how gay rights came on really strong. Women's rights came on really strong. Civil rights continued even stronger for ethnic minorities in the States and so on and so on. You watch all these waves come and you go, wow, this is really interesting that just things keep coming and going and keep coming and going and keep coming and going. And you sort of have to have that sense of a lightness of being about it, the unbearable lightness of being, that everything is just cycling around, going over and over and over. And even when issues get so bad that you have a civil war, like the States is headed for a civil war, and you're going to have all this destruction, it may be a good thing in the end. We may get rid of the two-party system. We may really break down all kinds of things that are entrenched now that don't work at all and are causing a lot of problems in society and economically and for the government, for the people. So, you have to have just a sit back kind of view and go, look at this comedy just playing out. So it's like a comedy. What we want to do is get away from the idea of tragedy, So drama is what? Tragedy and comedy. And in a way, we want to shift from tragedy towards comedy because most of us will get tragic about everything. We see a young child die, and from a relative perspective, we go, that's just tragic. It just seems tragic because we live longer usually. But, is it really tragedy? Is it really tragedy, or is that really deep down a sentimental view? When a child dies, we can grieve, we can feel a sense of loss and so forth. But is it tragedy? Is it a universe of evil preying upon us, a strategic, a tragedy experience? Not really. Not really. So we have to have a lightness. Now, you wouldn't laugh at a child dying, although there are stories of Mahasiddhas doing just such things because they're so out there with their realization that they see the absurdity of everyone crying over the death of a 5-year-old when they're going to die anyway. And the 5-year-old handles it better than the 70-year-old or the 50-year-old or the 40-year-old anyway. So there's a humor in that. There's a lightness in that. There's an absurdity in our attachment to the world and our attachment to our bodies and our lives and thinking they last forever and thinking, oh, I'm so serious. I have to make all these big decisions about my life and really make sure I do it right. Yeah. And then you die and you spent your whole life being worked up about it. That's absurd. And that's a bit humorous, So this is what's meant by it. And Machandanatha, of course, was so beyond this kind of stuff. He was the first of all the great 84 Mahasiddhas. And I'm glad I know him. I'm glad you know him in this way, and his wife Konkanamba, and the power that they represent for us in our tradition is just powerful. And he gave so many wild examples in his life of, going beyond all the boundaries and understandings. Like when he went off to the realm of the apsaras and the damsels, right? And he's drinking wine and he's having sex all day long. And he's not coming back to teach the disciples. He's just hanging out there in these other dimensions, having a big orgy party out of it all, big Bacchanalia fest, a Dionysus cult kind of thing. And the students are like, wow, what's up with Guruji? He's totally lost it. He's in the desire realm. He's gone, So there's a big teaching about that. And he was just poking fun at and tearing apart every kind of conceptual base we have that limits us. This is also the lightness and the humor, one of the 5 aspects of our enlightened being. Okay. Secondly, can you please share with us what role, if any, comedy has played in your sadhana? I think I just did. I didn't see the second part. In what ways can comedy, goofiness, joke making in general be expressed? Okay. An expression of wisdom and compassion. I have developed a sense of making light of things that I know I would be sentimental about. And that has helped me to be comedic, to make light of, to make jokes about it, to make jokes about other people getting tight about things. That's all. It really worked for me to help loosen my tightness up around this. So that's the one way I've used it there. And I tend, like I said, looking at the social cycles, seeing everybody get all worked up about all these great issues that fade away to the next issue and fade away to the next issue, seeing that humans are just emotional train wrecks that get excited about everything all the time and think everything is tragedy, is tragic, then it's pretty humorous. So I see that as an ongoing comic show. Sajidakini and I love watching comedy. The new Bill Burr special is just awesome. I love any of that kind of cutting social commentary comedy. Dave Chappelle, stands as a god amongst men of comedians, above them all. But then Bill Burr's a really close second. Joe Rogan's under there somewhere. Ricky Gervais is killer in that way as well. And it's great because it just keeps it so real. Comics in the old world were meant to keep it real. That's what comics were. The king had to fool the court jester. That's the comic on stage today. If you limit what they say with woke nonsense, you destroy the ability to laugh at yourself and see where you're stuck. And that's why I adore the comics who say F you to all that woke nonsense trying to cancel them. Dave Chappelle just had a show canceled somewhere, and he went on and gave a monologue about that and talked about, and made fun of it. It's awesome. So, I like these guys who, the ones I named, they all stand up and fight against being censored. And so they should, because they supply a very, very important aspect for the normal public. Normal public is not going to do meditation, not going to do mantra, but they'll listen to a comedy show. And those comedians are going to rip the crap out of everybody. So everybody gets it. Nobody's spared. And that's the beauty of self-analysis through a comedy show, that the public can get this. This was the original idea of comedy and tragedy as drama, from the Greek understanding of acting and comedy and tragedy. And I think the comics are the fool court jesters who were the esoteric keepers of the knowledge in ancient times. Now they're just comics, but some of those comics have some seriously deep philosophy they live from, and that's why they're comics. So, yeah. Okay. Skits, films, plays, exactly. Recommend comedians' work. There you go. You're ahead of me in the question. I'm always answering what you're already asking. Good Guru Yoga. Let's see. Outside Space and Time. So yeah, those are some of my favorite comics. Russell Brand, I love his stuff. He kills me. I don't agree 100% with all of his ideas on his little show, the Russell Brand, whatever it is. But, the intro where the little bird comes out, the little crow comes out and then farts. It's classic. Cracks you up every time. He's got some great ideas of how to look at the world and keep questioning, So I think that's great. And there's some great movies. There's some great documentaries. I think Religulous with Bill Maher is one of the best movies. Or documentaries, Religulous. I just crack up through the whole thing. What's that one about the world, the dystopian world, and it all crashes? The really one about the crazy how. No. Who knows the one I'm talking about? The really famous movie about how nutty the first movie that came out like this. Yeah. What's that called? Idiocracy? No, who's in that? That's not it. But that's good too. Anyway, they're good. I think Dogma is a good one. Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. Don't like Ben Affleck as an actor, but he doesn't ruin the movie. They wrote a really good movie there, Dogma. It cracks me up. The whole world's burning, like the revelations of fire and brimstone. They're having a time with it. Anyway, good questions and good stimulation of conversation. Took me past the 10:30 mark, so that was good. Wagner. Okay, Wagner Fio. Okay, so the online foundations course is starting this weekend. If you want to get in there, there's no limit to it because it's online. And in there, we go into the foundation practices and the prayers, but I unpack them for you word by word, line by line, and what the deeper meaning of all of these prayers are, and what are the deeper inner places you go to in the inner yoga when you're practicing these prayers to make them effective at full transformation and sometimes direct realization. Okay, so just before that, Wagner says, can you comment on how prayers work and why they work? Oh, that's a big one. Yeah, just briefly, prayers work on a lot of levels. So ultimate non-dual teachers will tell you that prayers don't work the way we think. There's nothing coming out of you going out to affect anybody else. Okay, in the absolute view, that's true. In no time physics, no motion physics, that's probably true. But rather than saying that's true and this is false, Tantra, if anything, has taught me that that is true and this is true. So on one level, nothing's happening. On another level, something's happening. So on one level, I don't walk upstairs after this and have lunch. On another level, in reality, I definitely walk upstairs and have lunch, right? So to say that one excludes the other is a very dualistic view, as my Dzogchen master taught me. So I would say that's true and this is true. And in that sense, Wagner, we can say that prayers definitely have effect. I've seen it. I've felt it. I've felt the effects when I've received them. I felt the effects when I've given them. And there's a physics basis for it too, in that your heart is an electronic organ. It's an electric organ, and it creates a pulse wave every time it contracts. And that pulse wave is an electromagnetic wave that goes out. And the interesting thing about the heart wave is that it's not, we tend to think of energy as amorphous without content. But energy and information are actually kind of two words that mean the same thing. So when a pulse wave of your heart goes out, it contains the energy or the information of what the being is experiencing when it goes out. That's why you can see mob rule take over, right? It just infects everybody because it's so intense and they're in close contact. Because as the wave goes out, it dissipates by a physics formula, but it never dies. It dissipates. Far away from us, it's less, but it never dies. So our heart wave as information goes out as electronic information, encrypted electronic information, coded. It hits your heart and your heart receives that actually. And that information becomes part of your matrix. It doesn't overwhelm you because you're your own person. But when that's being received and when it's being received from lots of people at once, it has a cumulative effect. This is the physics behind why prayers really work, actually. And anybody who wants to doubt it, all you have to do is go into the medicine about organ transplant and see how memories are transmitted through organ donor, or organ donation. So that works. Esoterically, on the level of the shamans and so on, and tantricas, when you really pray, which is what a ritual is, you get a result. This was the foundation of the Vedic tradition, the early Bon tradition, all of it. When you understand how to do ritual, which is really just the laws of energy dynamics, you get results. So prayer does work. Now, prayer has a third function, which is really good. It's good for us. It's good for when I pray for the benefit of all beings. It's good when I pray with compassion or for wisdom or for whatever for others, because it takes me off me. And it causes the most important transformation possible for a yogin, which is to get over yourself and to live for others, right? Live for everybody. So there are some ways that it works. We believe it works in our tradition. Timo, question on Tattva Shuddhi. When visualizing the elements, the tattvas, can we visualize ourselves and the tattvas as seen from the front, as if we're sitting in front of our body? Yeah. In the beginning, if it's difficult to hold that experience inside of yourself, then see it happening out in front of you. That's the first way I was taught. So that's fine. In fact, there was a huge painting on the wall of a human outline with no features inside, just a human outline, like a ghost. And then the colors of the elements were there, and the yantras were there, and the bija mantras for the elements were there. And that was all there to hit you. And so, yeah, on the outside is good. Even I recommended to the group here that it's really good if they make a 5-element model, a very nice 5-element model, and big, either half human size or human size, and keep it somewhere in the house that we have to see it. It's around all the time because subconsciously it works on you all the time, opening you into the reality of what you really are as the combination of the 5 elemental lights, okay? Or do we have to visualize ourselves from a perspective? No. So you can do it both ways. Okay. You're welcome, Jens. Okay. And I think you're welcome, Wagner. Trika said, good. Okay. I think we are all done. All right, everybody. You're welcome. Go and have a fantastic day. Love everybody. Be kind, be loving, be wise. Do your best to express relative wisdom in this world, as we have a breakdown of wisdom all over the place, with people attacking other countries and trying to steal them, and all kinds of countries trying to adopt legislature that will take away your freedoms, your freedom of speech, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Be wise, but be full of love and compassion. All the best. Sarvamangalam. Here.